Wrath of Man is a new Guy Ritchie crime thriller type of movie that stars Jason Statham and it stars Scott Eastwood and a host of other people. And I'm gonna try to be as vague as possible about the story here. I don't wanna give away too much because, to be honest, the story has multiple iterations of it that flow through the narrative while you're watching it. There's a series of heists that are ongoing with these cash trucks, you know, these trucks that deliver a bunch of cash to a lot of these different businesses. There are a lot of heists that have been happening and they've been getting robbed. And something happens to Jason Statham's character that makes him infiltrate the cash truck business so that he can try to find out what happened to him and who did it. And he has to take out a bunch of bad guys along the way. That's as much as I want to give you about the story without actually giving you the story. One of my favorite things about watching Guy Ritchie movies is that I love that I can always tell that I'm watching a Guy Ritchie movie. Guy just has such a sense of style and flair that's unmistakable. There's no question when you're watching a Guy Ritchie movie, like 5 minutes into it, you're like, oh yeah, I can tell who directed this. Sometimes when you're watching a movie, even if it's well directed, sometimes you can't really tell who directed it, and the director doesn't really have that established sense of style. It's not the case with Guy Ritchie. So I will admit that the vibe for this Guy Ritchie movie is a little bit different than the Guy Ritchie movies that Guy Ritchie has Ritchied before. That sentence doesn't really make that much sense, so I'm gonna try to clean it up by saying this one's actually a lot much more of a darker toned Guy Ritchie movie compared to the movies that he's done in the past. Don't get me wrong, there are some quips and some of that natural sardonic humor that you find in some of Guy Ritchie's films, but it all kind of clashes with this really metal, this really heavy, dark ass mood. It clashes with the whole mood of the darkness of the rest of the movie. Like even the musical score, and the musical score for this movie is actually eggs on a tip. The musical score for this movie is very sorrowful and haunting and just heavily emotional, but heavily emotional in that bad things are gonna happen type of way. I appreciated the musical score, but there's no question while I was watching it, I was just like, whoa, is Guy Ritchie going through some shit? Like, this is kind of heavy, man. Performances in this movie are about what you would expect. Jason Statham can always sell you on being a badass. I don't care what movie Jason Statham is in. I don't care what he's doing. I don't care if it's a cameo or a full-length role. This guy is gonna be able to sell you on being a badass. And he's always able to make you believe that he could beat the shit out of anybody in any room at any time. And he brings off that feel very good in here, but there's also kind of a lot of tragedy to his character hidden under the surface that you do appreciate as the movie goes on. There's some really slick looking and well-designed action set pieces and some shootouts that are really intense, edge of your seat, white knuckle type of things. Granted, there's not that many of them and some of them are kind of quick, but the point of violence and intense violence is constantly put across and emphasized to you, the viewer. So if you like that type of thing, you're going to enjoy this type of movie. One of those movies where, again, Guy Ritchie flexes his storytelling method of show and tell, but don't always do it in the order that you would expect. If I could compare Guy Ritchie as a director to anything, I would say that he's like a magician. You know how you go to a magic show, they show you the magic trick and you're like, holy shit, that was amazing. How did you do that? Okay, so then Guy Ritchie is the magician that like goes back through the trick and shows you exactly how the magic happened in the first place. Granted, at a certain point, the magic isn't the same anymore because you know how the trick works, but it doesn't mean you're not entertained to see how it all comes together while you're watching it. And that's what Guy Ritchie does. He's able to pull it all together with a certain flair and a certain style that can't help but make you feel intrigued about what he's pulling off. Like I said, this is a Guy Ritchie movie, but it's also a Guy Ritchie movie that doesn't always feel like a Guy Ritchie movie. Some parts of humor and some of the dialogue in the script clashed with the tone that the movie was going for. It wasn't a huge deal to me, but there are just some one-liners and some lines where I'm just kind of like, that feels like it would be better served in a different style of movie, not in this movie. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, well, that's Guy Ritchie, that's what he does. Not that big a deal, but it is something I have to mention. I think my bigger issue with this movie is the way the storytelling affects the pacing. I think there was a more efficient, streamlined way that Guy Ritchie could have told this. It shows you a lot of different perspectives from different groups of people. At times in this film, it feels like you're restarting the movie over and over again because you constantly have to get reinvested in what's going on. Like you're following this train of thought, then all of a sudden the train splits off the tracks and goes in another direction and goes backwards. And so you kind of have to follow that train back to its original starting point. So you do this enough times and it makes the movie feel like it's longer than it needs to be. Like I'm looking at some of the ways he decided to tell the story and I'm just like, man, I just feel like you could have cut some of this. You could have had some of your usual flashbacks and flash forwards, but you could have done it in a better way that didn't make me feel like I was watching the ending of the movie over and over again and then going back and seeing it again. I'm just saying, a little bit more convoluted than it needed to be, but nevertheless, Wrath of Man was an entertainingly solid watch watch at the movies. And yes, I did go see this in the movie theater. I was safe. I am vaccinated, of course, but yeah, I would recommend that you guys go check this out if you get a chance to. Wrath of Man was a pretty good time at the movies. I'm gonna leave this one in the Silver Age for Man of Steel. Guys, those are my thoughts on Wrath of Man. Tell me what your favorite Guy Ritchie movie of all time is. Put that in the comment section down below. Please stay tuned for more videos. Please like and subscribe to the Superfan Show. And as always, if you like what you see, tell me how you feel and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.